Hello, my name is Jim. Welcome to my booktube channel about books and reading and stuff. Happy Christmas, or if you're American, happy holidays. Here in Georgia we celebrate Christmas on the 7th of January. We use a different calendar for that. In this video I want to look at my 3 favourite reads of the year, my top 3 reads of the year. It's been difficult to select them because I've rated 18 of the books I've read this year as 5 stars. 18 of the 68 books I read. The 3 books I've chosen are all very different one from another. I can't hold any of them up because these were all ebooks. The last couple of years since the pandemic I've been doing a lot of reading of ebooks. They're a lot easier to get hold of, and there's such a variety, and also using NetGalley and Book Sirens. They're all over 400 pages, which is longer than what I usually read. Usually I'm reading between 250 and 350 pages for a book, but these 3 are all over 400 pages. They're not all published in this year, 2021. A lot of what I read is back catalogue, but they're all 21st century releases. Also, all 3 of these authors were new to me. This year I haven't read the same author twice. This is the first year that's ever happened. I noticed this back in April. I was reading lots of different authors, and then I just carried on reading different authors each time. So, without further ado, here are my top 3 reads of the year. Going in reverse order, I'll start with number 3, and this was an Australian noir novel, The Devil in the Red Dirt by Michael P. Smith. This was published this year, 2021, but it's set in 1963. Usually with noir we think of the American films, the 40s and 50s, or we think of Scandinavian noir. Australian noir was a new subgenre for me, but I really love this book. Noir is like sleazy and gritty and dark, as the name suggests. The Devil in the Red Dirt is set in Australia, and it starts in Darlinghurst, the seedy heart of Sydney, when a Rolls Royce with 2 murdered Aboriginal children is abandoned in the centre of Darlinghurst. And the New South Wales police are not too interested in investigating the murder. In 1963, Aboriginal Australians were not even citizens. That would come in 1967. But there's 2 broken cops who reluctantly decide to investigate this murder. The first is James Harris, known as the Tembok Pom, who, as well as working for the police force, also doubles as the right-hand man of the local gangster kingpin, and he's a drug addict to boot. And then there's Lescott, who's working in Missing Persons Bureau, and ironically his wife and daughter went missing and he didn't notice for a couple of weeks. He thought they'd just gone to the wife's mother because of his drinking habit. These 2, Lescott and Harris, end up going on a road trip across Australia from Sydney to Adelaide and then to Alice Springs, where they also meet Charlie, an Aboriginal who's feeling very guilty about these missing Aboriginal children, and no one's doing anything to investigate their deaths, and together they look for the answers to the mystery. It's not a book for the faint of heart. There is child abuse, there's sexual abuse, there's corrupt policing, there's racism, particularly against the Australian Aboriginals, and there's a lot of drug abuse as well, and alcoholism. It's a dark novel, but it's brilliantly done, and it will stay with me for a very long time. The second book of the year for me was The Sword of Kaigan by M.L. Wang. This was published in 2019. It's a fantasy novel, a standalone fantasy novel. It was self-published and it was amazing. It tells the story of the Matsuda family. It's a Japanese-inspired war fantasy. The Matsudas, they can control water at an elemental level, turning water into ice, for example. And we start by following Mamoru, who is a 14-year-old boy who's training to become a legendary fighter like his father. And it's also the story of his mother, Misaki, who comes from a distant region that's less patriarchal than the Sword of Kaigan. The Sword of Kaigan is the name for this peninsula where the action takes place. And Misaki is trying to adapt to being a good housewife. She's given her husband 4 sons. She's suppressed her sword skills, but Misaki is ready when it comes to fight. It's interesting for a fantasy novel that the 3 main female characters in this story are all middle-aged women who are mothers, but it's a very unusual book, a very intense book. The fight scenes are very intense, and unusually one of the main climatic scenes comes near the beginning of the book, like about 40% in, rather than at the end, like a lot of fantasies build up to a grand finale. There is a second climatic scene about 75% of the way through, but there's a lot here in this book. It's over 500 pages. There's a lot about the politics of the region. This region has always been defending the motherland, and this region spurns technology. In other parts of this world there are mobile phones and computers and cars and buses and planes, but in this region, the sort of Kaigan, is very much like a medieval Japan with very limited technology. Some have compared these books to The Poppy War and to Avatar: The Last Airbender. I haven't read these books, but I've heard they're good as well. Now, can we have a drum roll? My best read of the year. This was We the Drowned by Carsten Jensen. This was published in 2006 and it was a Danish bestseller. It's set in the seaport of Marstal and it's a multi-generational novel set from 1848 to the end of the Second World War, and it's about the lives of the people of this seaport. Sometimes it's told from one person's perspective, but often it's told in the first person plural, which is very unusual. We. The we can be the villagers, the townspeople of Marstal. We can be the sailors. We can be the poor pupils tortured in Isega's classes in the school in Marstal. We can be the women left behind when their men go off to sea. Marstal is a community based around the sea. The sea is like its own character here in the novel, like the sea is in Peter Grimes' Benjamin Britten's opera. With the sailors we go around the world, we go to the Pacific, we even find Captain Cook's shrunken head at one point. We don't follow one particular character, it's more like a collection of characters. Sometimes we'll follow one character, but there's not an overall plot arc. It's a very different type of book. There is a lot of dark humour. Albert Madston goes to sea to search for his missing father, and he finds him on one of the Pacific Islands. There's but then the plot will jump until he's an old man and he's insuring naval vessels. I have a soft spot for maritime stories. When I was a child, I wrote a story for the school magazine, imagining I was a powder monkey aboard the HMS Victory, Nelson's flagship. This is an incredible book. My review here can't do it justice, unfortunately. I mean, what can you say about a book where when you finish you stare at the wall for 15 minutes just processing what you've read? This is a fantastic tale about the sea, what it does to people, what it does to the men who go to sea, what it does to the women who are left behind to sort out the town's business when their menfolk are away, cursing the sea for as many of the menfolk never return, being part of we. So those were my top 3 books for the year. The year's not finished. I've had 2 5-star books already this month. Life in Parts, the memoirs of the actor Bryan Cranston, who played Heisenberg in Breaking Bad, or Walter White as he was known, and The Library of Fragile History by Andrew Pettigrew, which is a fantastic, well-researched look into the history of libraries from ancient times to the modern times and the threats they've faced. The 2 books that I hope to finish before the end of the year, Little Dorrit and A Botanist's Guide to Parties and Poisons, are good, but I don't think they'll be in my top 3, so I think I'm safe posting my top 3 now. If you enjoyed this video, you can like and subscribe below, and I'll see you on the next video. Goodbye.